Well, good afternoon, Todd. How is it going today, man?
Fantastic. Actually, the sun is shining where I'm at in Michigan, so been a little bit
Michigan.
gray recently.
So sorry you're in Michigan. No, I was in Michigan for 42 years, man. Yeah, so we've got some love for Michigan. All of our clothes still say Michigan all over them. So tell us a little bit about what season you're in today, whether it's in medicine or in life. Just start us off a little bit about who is Todd.
Ooh, that's interesting. So there's probably two parts to this. I think so I'm a family physician and saw patients actively for a long time, including in the Navy. And my full-time clinical duties, I would say, are kind of sunsetting, fall, maybe even into that winter phase. And you think, well, this guy's still in his 40s despite the gray hairs on my chin, but it speaks to the second phase of my career that I'm now in, which is advocacy, education, and really building towards hopefully massive systemic positive change. So you could say one of it's maybe in the winter, and the other one might actually kind of be in the spring, kind of maybe getting close to summer. So it's exciting, I would say. So that started actually when I was in the Navy, and it became sort of a thing that my family does. So a lot of individuals, when they're in the service, you get moved around a lot, right? You stay somewhere for 2 to 4 years typically, and then you move on. And we decided to take that plunge, if you will, in what year was that? 2007. So right at the housing bubble, or peak of that, we were renting the house out. By doing that, though, it allowed us to ride out the storm, if you will, and created a passive income stream and built up over time a decent amount of equity within that property. We did the exact same thing when we came back and I was in residency. So, here's a resident making $45,000 a year or whatever it was to work, 80 to 100 hours a week
Hmm.
and paying two mortgages. So at times it was a little tight. But we just kept going with that process. And so then we went to sell the houses. We had equity that we could then deploy in other areas. And to this day, we've always owned two homes and rented them out in some capacity. And it was through that process that allowed me to move into some other areas, like I mentioned, cryptocurrency and getting into companies at B shares and things of that nature. So that was the evolution for me. I think when you have that financial freedom, it liberates you to take a little bit more of calculated risk. And I talk about calculated risk all the time, whether it's professionally, personally, or investing. And it allowed me, I'm an instinct kind of guy. I talk about my spidey sense now and again and what have
Hmm.
you. When that decision was made to move me back to a clinic, there were so many things that were wrong with that on so many levels. And it was that financial freedom where it allowed me to push back. And I think the beauty of that moment in my life for others is it's empowering to my colleagues to say, you know what? I don't need to take this. There are other people out here who can help me navigate these waters. And oh, by the way, as a physician, you could literally throw a dart at a map and get a job.
Hmm.
And I think people feel that golden handcuffs where they don't feel like they can move. And I don't think that's the case for the vast majority of us.
Right. You said Spidey, Spidey sense. Another dad joke popped in my mind. I don't know which Spider-Man movie it was when they were talking about Peter Tingles. If you were ever in medicine and you had the Peter Tingles, you should probably listen to yourself. And if you need to make the change, something's telling you to make the change. Oh, that's so much fun. So,
Absolutely. Well, those characters, at least for me with Spider-Man, I relate to the kid that was bullied, and
mhm.
some of the traumatic things that happened in my younger years. And then the other part of it, I quote Stan Lee in the book, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm.
And I think for those of us that are in positions to have influence, we need to take that seriously and advocate not just for us and our WIFM, if you will, but for other people.
Yeah.
We're all human beings. We're all in this game of life together. From an investment perspective, we definitely have that piece active, and that'll probably continue to be active forevermore, if God willing, if you will. But I'm also involved in an investment club, and that's our next step is to get the real estate portion of the portfolio going. But it doesn't have to be active management. You know, there are a lot of individuals out there who will do this for you, and you just got to find the right connections and what have you. So I think it's a brilliant way to go, and I would encourage just about all of my colleagues to dabble in it in some capacity or another. That's my opinion. Obviously, not financial advice and whatever other disclaimers we got to put on this, right? But I think it's a great way to create that income stream aside from being in corporate medicine. You could think of it as a high risk mutual fund, may be the best way to describe it. It started with our comic book club. There were four of us that, we were selling comics and doing all these things, and we took like $1,200 and turned it into like $100,000 in about a year and a half. I mean, there's some big returns you can get if you kind of know what you're doing. And then it was like, okay, we need to get serious with this and make sure that we've got a better structure. And so from there, we created our LLC, we got our EIN, and we expanded the pool. And so the current investment club is heavily weighted in cryptocurrency, which has served us well. We also have a stock portfolio where we sell some covered calls and some options. But the core of the business, which has existed since we started this, is the collectible stuff with comic books. Believe it or not, we've made money on buying and selling rocks, and I get a lot of
Rocks.
I get a lot of crap for that one. But you go to these estate sales and something catches your interest and so on and so forth. So we've kind of assembled this group of I think we have about 25 people in the club now. Doctors, lawyers, architects, a lot of my friends, people I've met over the years. So we have this brain power in there as well. And we get to try and experiment with different things. And so there's not just the financial win, but the educational win and the camaraderie as well. For example, we started the company in the peak of the bull cycle with the last crypto market. The fact that we survived that and are now thriving speaks to the testament of what we built. I mean, for example, the club was up like 70% last year.
Oh, wow.
And this year we expect to exceed that by quite a bit, what's going on in the crypto landscape, even though we've had a little bit of downturn recently. So, yeah, I mean, and I guess, what that speaks to, Brett, is there are opportunities out there, but you have to be a little bit courageous or know people that are in that and then trust them or make relationships or get in a group that's doing this. And that was part of why we did it too, was to allow individuals that wanted exposure to those asset classes but didn't want to actively manage it to join a group of us. You could say degenerates, I suppose, in that regard. But there's many of us that have been doing it for years now, and we're comfortable with these big swings. But I think setting boundaries is key. When we go through school, we are taught to put patients first, kind of above everything, even to our own detriment at times. And we see that in the suicide rates that are going on and in the burnout rates, etc. So I think setting boundaries is the absolute one thing I would suggest. You have to have the capacity to say no. If it doesn't feel right, there are those of us out there that have potentially been down the path or know someone that can help. So please reach out. There are lots of amazing physician organizations that are willing to support you that exist.
Yeah, and that's echoed oftentimes. Some of the greatest guests that we have come on the show talking about this. Knowing boundaries, setting boundaries is a huge piece of this. And when you say no, no means no. You don't need to explain. You don't need to do any of that.